So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Good afternoon to those out west. My name is Diego Gonzalez, and I am the Corporate Sales Manager for CDW Canada. I'll be hosting your call today with CDW in Palo Alto on how to protect coworkers from anywhere with Prisma Access. I am joined by Mike Loso and Steve Wong from Palo Alto. I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit. But just going to go over quickly some housekeeping items for those people on the call that we can kind of, so we're all on the same page here. So if you do have any questions, feel free. We definitely want this to be an engaged webinar where you are participating. Feel free to throw those questions on the chat, and we'll have either Mike or Steve or somebody on the Palo Alto team field those for you. If you have any questions you'd like to take offline, please send those to myself or to your account manager directly, or anybody as well on the call from the Palo Alto team. And then lastly, if there's any of you that would like a more individualized or personal conversation with the folks over at Palo Alto, by all means, reach out to myself and or your account team, and they can definitely set those up for you. So moving on a little bit, just quickly going to give you a CDW overview before we get started for those on the call today. Here. There we go. So about that. So who are we? So we are the leading IT solutions and services partner. How do we do that? We integrate and manage technologies to help our customers achieve their outcome. So how do we do that? Here's a bit of an eyesore chart with our kind of chronological time history as a company. So we are about 36 years in the industry, 17 here in Canada. So I'll just kind of outline a few key points within our history that it will be really relevant to the folks today on the call. So 2003 kind of being our entry point into the Canadian market with the acquisition of Micro Warehouse. And now moving on to 2015, where we acquired a company based out of the UK called Kelway. And what that really did for us was expand our global footprint, which many of our customers, and I'm sure some of them on this call have, global offices that require a partner that can help them globally, not just in the US and in Canada, but, places all over the UK and across the globe. And then lastly, the one that I really want to touch on, because I want to keep this presentation very brief to let the folks at Palo Alto shine, is for me the most important key in our recent history with the acquisition of a company called Scalar Decisions. So for those on the call that are not familiar with them, so they were and are a reputable and successful solution provider in Canada with its very deep technical expertise in around professional services, managed services, and delivery engineers. What that really did for us here in Canada was really round out our portfolio and really deepened our technical skill sets and our bench. With, I think, now doubling our internal ITS resources, which I will speak to in a little bit, but just some other small kind of key points for the folks today. With this acquisition really meant that we became a super strong partner with Palo Alto, as now we are their largest partner in Canada, as well as the only recognized and certified training partner for Palo Alto in Canada. So it really just speaks to that partnership and the depth of trust that the Palo Alto folks have in us to be the only recognized vendor to be able to train people on Palo Alto gear. So moving on a little bit, just some quick last points with some other acquisitions as of recently, more so in the US, to kind of show you what our strategic outlook looks like. So Aptris, the acquisition of a company called Aptris in 2019, which really augmented our ServiceNow practice. And now in 2020, acquired a company by the name of Cloud39, which was a leader in the data orchestration market. So moving on to kind of the company holistically, just to give you a view of who we are as a whole. So as you can see here, very large company, ranking I can't see it, 178 in the Fortune 500. So last year we were 199, and the year before that we were over 200. What that means for the folks here is we have a proven track record of growth and financial performance. So what that means for us internally means that we can continue to reinvest in the business to add and deepen our skill sets to meet and exceed your expectations when it comes to different needs. Another kind of key point that I'd like to touch on is 250,000 customers globally. That's a really neat stat when it comes to just how many partners and different VARs there are across the world. The fact that we can have 250,000 customers really speaks volumes to what our practice does and the trust that our customers have with us globally. For that stat, I'll talk a little bit more on the Canadian market, but that's around 30,000 Canadian customers out of that 250. As just touch a little bit on the points here, so about 35 plus years of experience in the industry, again mentioning from the 2003, about 17 in Canada, and over 2,000 technical engineer resources, of which, you know, as of late, we've added about 150 here in Canada with the acquisition of Scalar. Moving on, lastly, just to kind of, you know, make things short and sweet for everybody. So the Canadian market, I'll touch a little bit about what that looks like for the folks here. So we have now with the acquisition, 900 coworkers across country, 9 offices across Canada. So the way I like to look at it, and you'll hear this quite often if you speak to other reps, we have an office in every NHL city in Canada. What that means now is we are more local than we've ever been. In those offices across the country, it's not only sales, we have delivery engineers, we have ITS folks, so we call the ITS our Integrated Technology Solutions team, and that's comprised of vendor neutral solution architects, as well as the delivery engineers that are people local to you to be able to deliver and deploy the solutions that we are selling today. And then lastly, 1.2 billion, just kind of really showing that track record of proven growth and proven financial performance here in Canada as well. So that, you know, we are a wholly subsidiary from the US, that we are independent and we do make decisions based on our market as well. So that's all I had for you folks. I'll open it up right now. I'll introduce Mike. He'll take over the webinar just to kind of speak to the Prisma Access, but he is the sales specialist for Western Canada and Palo Alto, and I'll let him, you know, do the rest of the talking, and I'll come back to speak with everybody when it comes to the questions.
Thanks everybody for having me on. Like Diego said, my name is Mike Loso. I'm the West Region Sales Specialist for Prisma Access. I'm not joined today by my SE, Sangam Menikayan. We had a divide and conquer day, but I'm the more interesting one, so that's what you guys are lucky. I am joined today by Steve Wong. He is our Canada Channels SE manager. Is that the title, Steve?
Sure. I am Channel SE team lead, so let's leave it at that.
Yeah, team lead. So we're here to talk to you about how we're protecting workers from anywhere or from home, if you want to use that acronym. And just, let's make this an open conversation, or at least make sure you're, if we're hitting on something that you have questions about, make sure that you throw those in the chat window, and we'll get to them at the end of the deal here. So I've got quite a few slides. I do not like death by PowerPoint, but I will try to get through them as quick as I can. And I'll definitely stay on the ones that I think are more pertinent to how we manage the work from home or the protection of users from anywhere. So there's a lot of emerging challenges today in the world. Obviously, besides the micro challenges, we have the macro challenges as well, as we like to call them in our company. But the biggest piece to that is, the digital transformation really is happening. We've got a lot of businesses moving to the cloud with their apps moving to cloud, whether it's a SaaS-based app or they're owning that app in the cloud. But users are more and more working from anywhere. And that was really kicked off before the whole pandemic kicked off. We started seeing a lot more of that happening with companies, but it just accelerated that movement. And also, too, a lot of users are now saying they'd rather stay at home and continue to work from home. And there's just conveniences to that, right? And so also, I think companies are saying, hey, our employees are much more much more what's the word I'm looking for? They're staying busy. Their performance is higher. the whole thing is working out well, and we could probably look at losing some of that real estate that we're paying high dollar for all the time. So I think moving forward, we're definitely going to see a hybrid work environment. Plus, we have these things called point solutions that are creating the security infrastructure in companies, or the architecture, and that's a lot of complexity, and you have to have a lot of resources to manage all those different point solutions. But when you have that built out into your environment, you have a lot of security gaps, right? But it also leads to poor user experience, especially when you have users that have to VPN to access data center or access SaaS applications because of IP addresses and so on. So it makes a lot of cumbersome management, and there is still some risk involved as well. So we have a little bit of a unique approach to the market, and we started this out a couple 2-3 years ago, and I'll touch on that here. We have, and we are known for our firewalls, right? We started that next-gen firewall back in 2007, basically shipping our first one, that PAN OS that operates on that. And we were able to take that and move that into a VM series. So having that OS run outside of the box, and we've had some great success there as well. So having those two technologies, we were able to build out what we call Prisma Access, which is our firewall as a service. And the great thing that I like talking about this platform is that not only is it 3 different ways for you to consume security, it also gives you the chance to say, hey, I need firewalls in my data center, or I need a VM series running in my cloud, but I also would like to maybe secure my mobile users or my remote networks and not have to put a firewall out there. And so you can use a hybrid approach to all of those scenarios. And then you can also manage it through a single management plane, which we call Panorama, which is a strong play when you have that capability. So, and all that technology that we do, or those 3 solutions I just talked about, are all backed by that network security platform, right? We still have the great threat prevention, URL filtering. We still have the largest sandboxing in the world, right, with Wildfire. We've added DNS security to the stack now. We're adding what we call Enterprise DLP, which is a cloud-based solution to the stack. Now we've added CloudGenix to our stack, which is our next-gen SD-WAN. And all that platform does is it helps you not only connect all your sites and your users, but it secures them as well, and it helps you manage them. And it really does create a trust and untrusted zone environment. So I'm going to talk more about Prisma Access from here on out to kind of give you more of a lay of the land and just kind of go over that. So one of the things that I will tell you that we're doing is we've taken that PAN OS and we've globally distributed it on the AWS and GCP backbone. So we're running on their hardware or on their infrastructure, right? And that allows us to be flexible, to be able to be agile, to be able to scale out and back as needed based on traffic patterns. And it's all automated. And so we've done this also by offering a software-based neutral environment, hardware neutral environment. And so whatever your clients are bringing to the table, whether it's a Linux device, iOS, Android, Windows, or Apple Mac device, right? We can handle that because our agents are running on those devices free of whatever OS it is, right? And then we also build out Prisma Access to handle inline encryption and decryption that scales. So when you have that piece of the puzzle, now you're creating more of a zero trust network access, right? Instead of letting that encrypted traffic pass through. And finally, what I think is the beautiful thing of what we're doing is we're creating a single tenant model for all of our customers. So you will not share a firewall in our infrastructure with any of our other Palo Alto Networks customers. So that's a strong play in my opinion. So now Prisma Access is really considered 2 layers. It's a network layer, which I'll talk about here next, and a security service layer. The network layer really is truly how do we get you connected into our network, and our network is really that Google Cloud Tier 1 fabric, right? That's all over the entire globe. And I'm going to show you a slide that looks like that. And how do we get your mobile users connected in, right, with using a small lightweight agent that they can run on their devices? How can we use an IPsec device or a SD-WAN device to connect your branches, right? Even how do we let your clientless VPN work, right, with your BYOD? All those things are designed and built with Prisma Access in mind, or Prisma Access is built that with in mind, so we can make sure that you're connected anywhere and everywhere throughout the world. And this is what that slide shows here. So you can see that all these dots are considered our compute regions throughout the world and how they're connected on that tier 1 express fabric. And over that network, we have additional points of presence to where all your users, wherever they're located, they can automatically connect into that network and then be on that tier 1 fabric and running throughout the globe. Whether it's North America, in Canada only, so on, we have it covered to where your users are going to be able to have that really good experience. Because if you're connecting in, let's say in Vancouver, you're going to connect in that Vancouver point of presence, and then you're going to compute in that northwest region of North America. So the end user experience is better and increases their fund meter because they're able to access most of their applications, specifically their SaaS applications, within the same region that they're working in. So on top of that is our second layer, which is our security service layer. And I talked about what our firewall is already made of back a couple of slides ago with all of those security services. Those are included in Prisma Access. But just to highlight again, we build Prisma Access with SSL decryption in mind. And then also the DNS piece is part of that solution as well. And we created that zero trust network access with Prisma Access. So all that combined, again, we work in a zone-based firewall environment, right? Trust or untrust. So if you've got users and branches connected in at the network down here below, and they're running in through our compute regions, they're considered trusted zones, right? Let's say your headquarters has a Palo Alto Networks firewall on it, and it's connected in to Prisma Access through a service connection. You definitely now have that headquarters as considered a trusted environment. But these locations, they may not be trusted, so we'll treat those as untrust. So here's a little kind of a picture of what that architecture would kind of look like. You know, today you have users that are VPN in, branches that are connected into the data center. and then as we've grown our mobile user or our work from anywhere footprint, a lot of that traffic now that's flowing in has increased over time. And so we had to adjust, right? We've had to say in our data centers, well, we need to add more capability to handle that traffic, but that doesn't answer the limited gateway capacity, right? So end users not only are having to hairpin back into the data center, but they're also having still, high latency moving out into that SaaS application, or to the point where they're saying, hey, I'm not even going to VPN in. I'm just going to go straight to Office 365 and do my work. And then now you've left yourself as a company or an organization vulnerable to attacks, right? So what we've done is we've taken that approach of, hey, how do we block, or how do we wrap a security blanket around those users wherever they're at? So now instead, a user is going to hop into our Prisma Access compute region, and then they're going to be able to offload into that SaaS application or back to a data center or a VPC in order to give them access to resources, and then give them that full security stack as if they were, again, working behind a branch or behind a data center to give them that complete security, right? All the meanwhile lowering that traffic flow back to that data center, so you're not having to hairpin back out to these applications living elsewhere. And we do the same thing with branches, right? We talked about that earlier, or I did anyway, about the SD-WAN capability of creating a path right to Prisma Access, or some type of IPsec device that can do that as well. So overall, as you can see, we've spread out the footprint. And if you remember that slide I showed you with all those compute regions, each one of those compute regions, it has firewalls built into those locations, and allows that, like I said, that traffic to be spread out throughout our entire infrastructure. And then this is kind of more of a little bit of a drawing of the architecture and what that would look like. Again, devices that and networks that connect in, and headquartered offices or data centers that connect in are all done through IPsec technologies, and it allows your users, like I said, to be once they're on and connected to the network, they are now protected and running everything through Prisma Access. So you have an always-on VPN, an always-on security solution for all your users, and then it allows you to give access to sanctioned and unsanctioned applications, and to monitor that and manage that, right? Some key differentiators that I like to talk about mainly is, and I've talked about this, but Prisma Access is really designed for all of the applications running in the cloud, internet, or the data center. And because the way we have designed it to give you a service connection back to your data centers or your private clouds, it allows you to give that user the freedom still to go directly to the SaaS application, all the meantime still having that always-on protection that is needed to make sure that the user is not going to get attacked. And of course, you know, with having our 100 locations, over 100 locations of connectivity, the user experience does go up, and it allows them to say, like I said, if you're working in New York City, you're going to compute in the Northeast. We're going to direct peer to, let's say, and I keep using Office as an example, but you're going to direct peer to that Azure environment, and it's going to have Office running in it. And you're going to have that compute all occurring in that in that same region, and so there's that latency level that just it goes down more and more. And I talk more about the zero trust network access, but really with user ID and app ID and having host information profiling capability with Prisma Access, it really does give you that that control of what applications and data your users are going to and accessing. And again, this is not a proxy. This is a full-fledged firewall where we're inspecting all traffic on all ports and protocols. So, and then finally, we can enforce a lot of consistent DLP policies, right? Out of the box, Prisma Access has about 20 DLP pattern capabilities. But if you added in, looking into our DLP, our enterprise DLP, which is our cloud-based approach, you get over 350 data patterns right out of the box to where you can certainly start using that immediately. And then this slide just shows you what Prisma Access Zero Trust Network Access gives you versus a traditional ZTNA or a traditional VPN. I'm not going to go through all this. You can read this. And these, by the way, these slides are going to be shared with you after this is over with, so you'll be able to have access to it. Wong, am I missing anything, or do you want to add anything to what I've said? I feel like I'm moving really fast.
No, this is good.
Okay. So let's talk about a few business values, and I also will be sharing some videos of this too as well, so you can watch their quick 1.5-minute videos. But a lot of you know in your region, you know, oil and gas is huge, right? We were approached last, I would say probably like June timeframe, where Schlumberger really decided they're gonna have to somehow, some way get all of their users that are not currently working from home, get them working from home, and get them protected. And so we were able to, in a matter of days, get go from 25,000 to 80,000 users on Prisma Access, and giving them that, like I said, that full, complete visibility of every single user, provide those policies as if they were working behind four walls and having a firewall sitting there, and then allowing them to make sure that their entire infrastructure is protected no matter where those workers are working from. So it was a big win, and there's a great video that we posted. It actually aired on like CNN and some other national news networks as well. The next case study I wanted to talk about was a pretty large one as well. It was when we took a global consulting firm, and they had been a Palo Alto customer in the past, and so again, having a traditional VPN in their pocket is what they were using, and to take them to an entire 225,000 user work from home environment in all those different countries, and get them up and enabled. We were able to do that really quickly. In a matter, I mean, it was in a week's time frame. And they were so impressed by it that they wanted to start doing business with us because they liked the way that we were able to operate and help them. And so now we're doing some partnerships with the same consulting firm. So I guess that's a win-win. Some of the other things that are some business value of what Prisma Access brings. On the left, in the blue and the orange, you can see kind of what it takes to run a firewall or a VM. It takes all the things that you have to do with updating, with making sure you're debugging, making sure you're always up and monitoring, deploying the new latest and greatest firmwares, and so on. So the list is long, right? And you can see what's involved with you managing that. Versus Prisma Access really is a service, right? You're having a global network and a global security infrastructure that is managed completely on the back end by Palo Alto Networks. And really, when you go on and you look at our management tool, which is Panorama, you're only seeing one or two firewalls, right? Or meaning you have your mobile user templates, you have your remote networks templates, and you have your service connection templates, right? And your service connections would be what you use to get in access to data centers or VPCs, right? Your remote networks are all your branches that you're trying to connect in, and then your mobile users are people working from anywhere. And so you're pushing a policy to that one firewall, where we're then building that out on the back end and managing that and taking that policy and applying that policy to every single firewall tenant that has your name on it. And so it's a lot of work in the back end. Again, it's a global distribution. It's a global network infrastructure. And all you have to do is to make sure that your policies match what your policies would match on your firewalls, if the users were working behind four walls, and that data was transmitting in and throughout a next-gen firewall. So what we are doing really is we're providing you a lot of speed and agility, right? We can spin up users and sites within a matter of hours, not days. We can help you with mergers and acquisitions quickly. We're giving you consistent security and compliance, and we do that by not only taking the same platform approach that we had with our firewalls, our next-gen firewalls, but we're using that and being able to take those same policies and copy and paste those into the Prisma Access plugin. And overall, reducing operational costs and complexities. And there's a lot of indirect costs that come into play with owning and managing firewalls, especially on a global scale. But finally, at the end of the day, and what we all get calls for in the IT departments is improved user experiences is what we see the most. I'll tell you a quick story. So we were on a call yesterday evening with a client trying to set up their proof of concept or their evaluation. And one of the questions that we had was, how is this going to increase our user experience when we have people working from one side of the world that are trying to access the other side of the world? And basically we just said, well, when you get on that tier 1 fiber and you're running and you're connecting in, it's amazing how fast that traffic flows, right? And so after we were all done into the late hours and got the POC spun up, the director of security was just in awe because he was connecting in from Dallas, Texas, all the way over into Vietnam, and he was accessing files in Vietnam, and he could not believe how fast those files are transmitting back and forth between his device at home and in that location. So it's kind of a win for me personally last night, hanging in there late, working with a client to make sure they were happy. But to see that user experience, that fun meter kind of go up, it was exciting for us. So parts of this, let's see what's happening here. I think that's it. I mean, we're at Q&A from here on out. I know I went really fast. I'm not sure why this slide is not showing, but interesting. Maybe I'll throw it back to you, Diego, and you can just bring up your Q&A. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll go ahead and share that now.
Okay.
1 second here.
I just drank like 3 cups of coffee right before this meeting, so I apologize because I'm on the West Coast, so I'm still getting through. I haven't even had lunch yet, so.
All good, Mike. So we had a couple questions that came up kind of prior to the webinar that I'll give you a chance to answer. So the first one that came up was, what response pages are available for DLP?
Response pages. Yeah, that's going to be Steve. I don't know if you can help me with that one or not. I don't really because I'm not I'm not the technical side of my team. I'm not going to be able to really.
Yeah, so I'll admit DLP is extremely new product for us. But some of the stuff I've seen so far is you can customize an HTML page in terms of what message you want being displayed back to the user.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand the question then. Yeah, correct. So transparency, right? How do we either be transparent or not transparent with the user? So how do we either slap them on the hand and let them know that they did wrong, and give them that visibility, and then also be able to give your IT department that same communication? Totally 100% doable. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. And then the last question that I had, it was just two quick questions. The second one is, explain the whitelisting process.
Yeah. So what's so great about Prisma Access is that we will provide you a group of IP addresses for Prisma Access. And what that means is that allows you to, I guess, be able to whitelist those with your providers or your SaaS applications, for example, Office 365, and know that all of these IP addresses that are coming are locked in because, again, since you're a single tenant, we don't share those IP addresses with anybody else but you and your company. And then your partners, your SaaS applications that require, that locked in IP address, where's it coming from, et cetera, it is completely locked in.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I know there are competing solutions out there where, as a customer, you would be behind a pool of IP addresses, so it makes whitelisting a little more difficult when it comes to your SaaS applications. As Mike said, on Prisma Access, you are a dedicated tenant, and you will have dedicated IPs.
Yep.
Okay. Give me one sec. I'm just going to check the Q&A box to see. I'm going to have to stop sharing in order to check out the Q&A box and see if there's any other questions. Yeah, so there is another one. Is SD-WAN required for failover redundancy, or can BGP or Palo Alto-based methods be used with regards to branch or data center access?
Yeah. So the answer to that, is we definitely, you can use BGP routing for failover, and that's how we prefer to do it. And then really the SD-WAN is for the branch location is to take a look at that network traffic and decide which way it's going to go, what's the optimal path, and how do you measure it, specifically from our end. How do we measure it from the application level back down, right? So we know what kind of response time we're getting and so on. So that's the big thing. But yes, so we use BGP and allow you to for failover. So for example, if the compute region goes down, we automatically fail over to the next nearest compute region with your same exact policies and connectivity.
Great. Chris, I hope that answers your question. If not, then feel free to elaborate on the chat. Perfect. Yeah, I'll open it up. We'll leave it for chat box open for minutes if there's any questions. Again, I wanted to really thank everybody for their time absolutely today. Mike, Steve, Tori, thank you again for spending the time with us today to give us that, really a bit more in-depth look at Prisma. I'm sure there's a ton of value that customers will see from it. So by all means, for the people on the call, if there's any questions for the team, feel free to send those to your account manager if you don't want to do it on the chat box, or feel free to ask your account manager to set up a time with either Mike or Steve where they can, just chat with you individually to go a bit more in depth and answer any personal questions you might have.
Hey, Diego, I think we got a few questions on the Q&A chat box here, so we can probably address them live on the call here. Since we're done in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a question here. Does Prisma Access offer a category-based web filter? And the answer is yes, absolutely. that's part of our PAN OS firewall, and Prisma Access has all the capabilities of our native firewalls. The only difference being that Prisma Access is delivered out of the cloud. So beauty of that is that if you have policies configured for any on-premise footprint of our firewalls, through Panorama, you can have that consistent policy across anything via Prisma Access or your on-premise firewalls or VMs in your data center or in public cloud infrastructures even, right? What kind of latency is added to endpoint access? You have many remote staff who may be working rural, so they may have potentially slow access. Do you want to answer that, Mike?
Yeah, so obviously, first mile is something we can't control, but overall, we have an SLA agreement with Google, for example, that's inspected every 5 minutes throughout the day. And we're trying to keep an under 10 millisecond SLA with Google. And like, again, we check that, and that's at 4 nines as far as that goes. Again, so our processing time is super fast. With regards to maybe applications out there, we're looking at about a 36 millisecond average on 4 nines for latency. And again, because I think running those points of presence everywhere with that Google Express Fiber, that the SLA usually, or that latency really, that time frame lowers quite a bit when customers are typically used to bringing it home and then going back out again.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we won't be able to have much effect in terms of that first mile latency, especially if they're coming in on slower internet. But I suspect the user will see an overall improvement in experience, because the moment you get onto that Google point of presence there, where it's now distributed everywhere, so we actually get closer to the users, you're riding that Google network across the network to other sites, or to even egress out to a SaaS application. So I think overall, you're likely to see that the user experience improves.
And we keep talking about that network, but I will tell you, we're one of a handful of customers that have access to that network. There's not very many companies out there that have access to that fiber network. And so.
Yeah, so I know, like, one of the solutioning problems when you're looking at a global VPN network is that the caveat being you can't control the latency of the internet. The advantage of Prisma Access is that, in effect, we're taking you off the internet and we're putting you onto a private network globally, right? Another question here: would this augment or replace SD-WAN?
It augments it. Yeah, I would say it augments it. And the reason why I say that is because you still have traffic that could run on MPLS, for example, that is better traffic to run on there. I'm thinking voice or video possibly. But there's or certain applications that are really locked in, running in and out of the data center. But it's definitely augmented. Does Prisma Access help you balance some of your network traffic? Yeah, I mean because that secondary network that attaches to your network is there. There's just no control knobs to push and pull though, like you can with SD-WAN.
Yeah, so I would say that I think early on, when SD-WAN was kind of the topic of interest in the industry there, everyone looked at it as a replacement for MPLS, right? Typically in many designs, MPLS, you had one big firewall in your data center with one big internet egress, and that's where all the users would come back to and get their security before they went out to the internet. Well, kind of the problem that happened is that all the applications moved out of the data center and they went into the cloud. So looking at all those SD-WAN designs now, where the heck do you park that big firewall to kind of protect the users and administrate the policy? So that's the beauty of Prisma Access, is that this firewall capability is now moved into the cloud as well. So I would say absolutely Prisma Access is complementary to SD-WAN, because the often overlooked aspect of SD-WAN is the security, which is after the fact. Looking at Prisma Access, it becomes part of the solution instead of a bolt-on, right?
And I think we're flipping the switch, Steve. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you can define and architect your security architecture first, it really helps simplify your network architecture. That's kind of how I feel like I'm seeing it.
Yeah. So the key term there, if you guys haven't heard about it, it's called SASE. So that's for Secure Access Service Edge. And it's definitely looking at the convergence of SD-WAN and security. And absolutely, Prisma Access is part of that SASE architecture for us.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, I think we're good, Diego.
Yeah. Hey, I will leave with this. We said this earlier, but get with your CDW rep, because every cold gets treated with a different medicine, right? I react to ibuprofen differently than aspirin, whatever that is, if you want to use that as an analogy. And I think that when the beautiful thing about Prisma Access is it's flexible, right? It's got agility and flexibility built into it. And I think we can come in and we can look at what you currently have and help build a solution that maps to what you're trying to do or your roadmap is as you transition to a this new work from anywhere or work from home environment.
Sorry, Mike, we have one more question.
Yeah.
So the question was, we have users that are in Ontario and our DC is in Alberta. They do not have a good end user experience. Is Prisma Access going to help in terms of latency?
How much percentage of their traffic goes to the data center? That would be a question I would have. If it's traditionally we're seeing a roughly 25 to 30% of the traffic goes to a data center for application resources, etc., then all the traffic goes there. Is that because all the traffic has to go out of there too? So you're tromboning out of the, I use that term, but it's really, are you heading back to the data center and then out there to access anything, right? A lockdown VPN. And if that's the case, yes, it's going to increase your user experience a lot, because now you don't have to have that traffic all flow back to the data center.
Yeah, so I think there would be some additional detail required to answer that question.
Correct.
Yeah, I think if your primary data center has the main firewall that's used to protect users from the internet, and all the users in Ontario are coming back to Alberta to potentially go back to a website that's back in Ontario, then absolutely we're going to help with that scenario, right? Yeah. If your applications reside in the data center, we may have an improvement in user experience, but I think a lot of that will come down to who your internet provider is. If you have a variety of them, we may be able to help with that, but there would be other variables involved there as well.
Yeah. Hey, Steve. Go ahead, Steve. I was going to say, one thing we haven't hit on yet, and I don't know why we didn't have this in our slide deck, is the data sovereignty piece, right? Our ability now that we have our data lakes now living in the Canadian provinces is huge, right? So that's part of our plan to help grow our Canada footprint as well.
Yeah, so part of Palo Alto Networks' commitment to Canada is that we are building a lot of our cloud services that are on Canadian soil. One very big piece of Prisma Access and the whole Palo Alto Networks platform is what we call our data lake. So the ability to have logs from any security solution as Palo Alto Networks sent into one consistent repository that then lets you do things like visibility and analytics across your entire environment to have better security outcomes. That is all now resident on Canadian soil. And one point I did want to make is that while Prisma Access is something where we manage PAN OS, the software that's running on it, we're responsible for the uptime. It is still ultimately, the customer's responsibility to manage the policies, the posture of the firewall and such. And that is something that if you're comfortable with it and you have the resources inside your organization, then great. But if you don't, CDW absolutely can help you with that, right? They have the ability to manage it, whether it's on-prem or Prisma Access in the cloud. They can help you construct the policy, stand it up, and then even keep it maintained ongoing as well. So something to definitely have a conversation with CDW.
Is there any we still have, I think, another maybe 10 minutes if necessary, but we have it open. If anybody has any questions, by all means, feel free to add them to the chat or send them to any of the panelists here, and we can definitely get those answered. Just taking a second look here at the Q&A box. Nothing there. Nothing in the chat box. Perfect. So we can give everybody, some time back. But again, as I said earlier, thanks again to everybody who has joined us today. Hoping that you did see a ton of value from these conversations. And for more information, obviously reach out to your account manager or their manager, and we can definitely make sure that we are assisting you in that journey.